What's up, everybody? I'm Zombie Cat,
And I'm Skull.
and welcome to the Horror Den. I am very excited because today we are reading our first creepypasta, Abandoned by Disney, by Slime Beast. What do you know about this story? Or should I say, what do you think this story will be about? Because I know you have never read it.
Yeah, I've never read it. I mean, obviously, it's all over the internet, or it was, especially when we were younger. I don't really know how old the story is, except now that I look down at it. Yeah, it's 2013, so we were teenagers. I wasn't really big into the creepypasta scene like everybody else was, but, you know, as an adult, it's definitely appealing. My first interpretation of this story, if I'm blocking out all the things that I've heard on the internet and like from people watching videos about it and stuff like that, my first thought is that it's like a horror reality where somebody's like in a Disney park after dark. Like those old Chuck E. Cheese stories where they fucking go in really early.
I won't say you're wrong.
Okay.
I actually discovered last night that this story has sequels.
Really?
This story has sequels, and I have not heard of them, so I assume that's what we'll be covering in the next reading. So that's exciting because of that. I will be blind on that. I thought this was it.
See, the great thing about me being so blind into this is that we can cover as many as we want to, like well-covered ones, like ones that other...
I know some good ones.
So
plenty of good ones.
We have plenty of content and plenty of reactions since I have not read any of them.
And it's also exciting because you've experienced horror through like games, movies, books, but it's like not through this media of like creepypasta, so it's exciting.
Yeah, I discovered horror through the old-fashioned 80s ways that my brother and my cousin showed me.
Yeah.
So
me and my dad, that's how we used to do it. We would sit on the couch all day and literally just watch horror movies that I was way too young to be watching from morning to night. But all right. The story was written by Slime Beast, and the first time I ever read this story, I was talking to someone on Xbox Live in a party, and they were telling me about it, and they were hyping me up. They were like, there's a map that gets brought up in this story, and he was like, dude, I have one of those maps. And this is when I was kind of new to this scene, so I was like, oh god, is this real? But so it really creeped me out the first time I read it.
It could be real.
Maybe.
Who's to say? Who's really to say?
Slime Beast, probably.
Yeah. Where you at? I want to know the truth.
Hit us up. All right, so do you want to kick it off, or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll kick us off. Some of you may have heard that the Disney Corporation is responsible for at least one real live ghost town. Disney built the Treasure Island Resort in Baker's Bay in the Bahamas. It didn't start as a ghost town. Disney cruise ships would actually stop at the resort and leave tourists there to relax in luxury. This is a fact. Look it up. Disney blew $30 million on this place. Yes, $30 million. Then they abandoned it.
That's insane. That's so, like, it's insane how much money that is.
Yeah, the amount of times that I've thought about just if I randomly got $2 million. That's like life-changing money.
I know. It's like, to them, $30 million, that's just like maybe a dent, and not even a dent. That's like a penny to them.
Well,
probably.
I mean, Disney does own like 40% of the entertainment industry.
And just to state, I'm a Disney fanatic. I am obsessed with Disney.
And I grew up on maybe 2 Disney films. Horror was my Disney.
What's your favorite Disney movie? Besides Nightmare Before Christmas.
Well, that wasn't a Disney movie when I first watched it.
I know, but it still would probably be your answer.
My favorite Disney movie is probably... I'd probably have to say Hercules.
That's a good... Mine's Monsters, Inc.
See, because I grew up on Hercules, on The Jungle Book, and on Peter Pan.
Ooh, Jungle Book, that has me excited because this is perhaps related to Jungle Book.
So those are the 3 Disney films that I grew up watching. So, as an adult and as a teenager, like, I've discovered more of them, but those were my starting points.
Also, before we jump back in, how do you feel about abandoned places?
It's one of those things that, as a teenager, I always wanted to kind of ghost hunt. Sometimes there's always that kind of like urge, and so there was always the urge to go do it. But then again, I'm a little bit of a chicken when it comes to my real life. You will see this when we finally ever do like a stream where we play a horror game. When I'm in control of the character, nothing's happening. My immersion breaks. I wouldn't be there. I'm out. I'm totally out. But that's why we do this. That's why we love these kind of things.
To me, I've always had like a weird fascination with like abandoned places. Like, I love watching videos on YouTube of people going into like abandoned amusement parks, and like it's almost like that submechanophobia stuff that I show you. It's like, it scares me, but there's something like, I can't look away because it's so like seeing like an abandoned animatronic just like left in the water, like just in the blackness, is like, whoa.
It's like a train wreck. You just can't look away. Anyway.
Okay, back to it. Disney blamed the shallow waters, too shallow for their ships to safely operate, and there was even blame cast on the workers, saying that since they were from the Bahamas, they were too lazy to work a regular schedule.
Okay.
That's where the factual nature of this story ends. It wasn't because of sand, and it obviously wasn't because foreigners are lazy. Both are convenient excuses. No, I sincerely doubt those reasons were legitimate. Why don't I buy the official story? Because Mowgli's Palace.
Oh,
See?
There's that Jungle Book reference. Near the beachside city of Emerald Isles in North Carolina, Disney began construction of Mowgli's Palace in the late 90s. The concept was a jungle-themed resort with a large, you guessed it, palace in the center of the whole thing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the character of Mowgli, then you might better remember the story The Jungle Book. If you haven't seen it anywhere else, you'd know as the Disney cartoon from the past decades.
Mowgli is an abandoned child in the jungle, essentially raised by animals and simultaneously threatened, pursued by other animals. Mowgli's Palace was a controversial undertaking from the start. Disney bought up a ton of high-priced land for the project, and there was actually a scandal surrounding some of the purchases. The local government claimed eminent domain on people's homes, then turned around and sold the properties to Disney. At one point, a home that had just been constructed was immediately condemned with little to no explanation. And that's like so true, how the government can literally just in a snap of a finger just get rid of your land like that.
Yeah, I mean, if an interstate or a highway is being built and your house is just in the way, like you either take the lump sum or you take a very downgraded
like
payment later.
I'm not putting out who it is out there, but that's currently going on with someone in my family. Like, they are building an actual like highway, and their house they've had pretty much for as long as I can remember is basically just gonna get wiped out. Sorry, the government owns this now. That's so insane to me.
Yeah.
That's so insane.
The land grabbed by the government was supposedly for some fictional highway project. Knowing full well what was going on, people started calling it Mickey Mouse Highway. Then there was the concept art. A group of stuffed shirts from Disney Co. actually held a city meeting. They intended to sell everyone on how lucrative this project was going to be for everyone. When they showed the concept art, the gigantic Indian palace surrounded by jungle, staffed with men and women in loincloths and tribal gear, well, suffice to say, everyone flipped their shit. We're talking about a large Indian palace, jungle, and loincloths not only in the center of a relatively wealth area, but also a somewhat xenophobic area of the southern United States. It was a questionable mix at that point in history.
That's pretty funny. One member of the crowd tried to storm the stage, but he was quickly subdued by security after he managed to break one of the presentation boards over his knee.
Just to take a second, can you imagine being tackled to the ground with a security guard with a Mickey Mouse badge?
Get on the ground!
Like,
Get on the ground!
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would be embarrassed, or it's like that's a story I'm going to tell my grandchildren. I stood up to Disney and I was tackled by a burly man with a mouse for a badge.
Disney took that community and essentially broke it over its knee. As well, the houses were razed, the land was cleared, and there wasn't a damn thing anyone could do or say about it. Local TV and newspaper were against the resort at the beginning, but some insane connection between Disney's media holdings and the local venues came into play, and their opinions on a dime.
Treasure Island, the Bahamas. Disney sunk those millions and then split. The same thing happened with Mowgli's Palace. Construction was complete. Visitors actually stayed at the resort. The surrounding communities were flooded with traffic and the usual annoyances associated with the influx of lost and irate tourists. Then it just all stopped. Disney shut it down and nobody knew what the hell to think, but they were pretty happy about it. Disney's loss was pretty hilarious and wonderful to a large group of folks who didn't want to see this place in the first place.
That's insane. Imagine living close to something like that. Like, how annoying that would be. Like, all the flow of traffic.
I'm sure it's for people in Orlando.
Yeah.
Right there next to those
literally,
resorts.
yeah.
Like, can't even imagine.
I honestly didn't give the place another thought since hearing it closed over a decade ago. Keep in mind, this was posted in 2013.
Yeah.
So this resort would have existed in the 90s, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's what it said earlier.
Yeah, okay. I'm just dumb. I live maybe 4 hours from Emerald Isle, so really, I only heard the rumblings and didn't experience any of it firsthand. Then, I read this article from someone who had explored Treasure Island Resort and posted a whole blog about all the crazy shit he found there. Stuff just left behind. Things smashed, defaced, probably ruined by the disgruntled former employees who had lost their jobs. Hell, the locals from all around probably had a hand in wrecking that place. People there felt just as angry about Treasure Island as folks here did about Mowgli's Palace.
Plus, there were rumors that Disney had released their aquarium stock into the local waters when they closed, including sharks.
Jesus. Bruh.
Who wouldn't want to take a few swings at some merchandise after that?
My son Billy got his leg ripped off by a bull shark thanks to Disney.
Well, what I'm getting at is that this blog about Treasure Island got me thinking. Even though many years had passed since its closing, I figured it might be cool to do some urban exploration at Mowgli's Palace. Take some photos, write about my experience, and probably see if there was anything I could take home as a memento. See, this is where it loses me. Me? Not gonna happen. Curiosity? Sure.
Just imagine that, though, like, going in there and, like, seeing all this, like... Because imagine saying Disney World, for example, just got abandoned and left alone for, like, 100 years, and it's just, like... it's, like, just a foggy, spooky night, and you're just wandering around this, like... There's something about, like... Imagine, like, wandering through the Haunted Mansion or something at nighttime with just, like... It's been abandoned. That's so spooky to me.
Okay, side tangent. There used to be this ride over in Disney World in Florida, and it was the Great Movie Ride. It has since been closed. But, like, whenever you said that, I was just imagining walking through that ride, and it's just, like, what if they were still working, but they were all, like, falling apart and stuff?
Oh,
like,
God, yeah, I hate it.
Now, that's something I might do, because I love that ride, and I wish it would come back, but the other point.
It's also, like... I don't know if I ever showed you the... What's the underwater ride? It's like 1,000 1,000 Leagues Under the Sea, something like that.
Ride or movie?
It's a ride. Like, this is one of the submechanophobia, like, popular ones. There's a dragon that's completely submerged, and they left it in this dark, like, black room, and it just, like, started rotting away. I'm like, just imagine walking in there with a thing alone, and that's what I'm saying. I love it. It's like, it's so creepy, but I want to look at it. I'm not going to say I wasted no time in getting there, because honestly, it took me another year after I first found that Treasure Island article to get around to going up to Emerald Isle. Of course, of that year, I did a lot of research on the Palace Resort, or rather, I tried to. Naturally, no official Disney site or resource made any mention of the place that had been scrubbed clean. Even odder, however, was that nobody before myself had apparently thought to blog about the place or even post a photo. None of the local TV or newspaper sites had one word about the place, though that was to be expected since they had all swung Disney's way. They wouldn't be out there lauding their embarrassment, you know?
Recently, I learned that corporations can actually ask Google, for example, to remove links from search results, basically for no good reason. Looking back, it's probably not that nobody spoke of the resort, but rather their words were made inaccessible.
Is that true?
I have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, dude. Anyway. So in the end, I could barely find the place. All I had to go on was an old as hell map.
Yeah, the one that the dude on Xbox told me he had. He told me he had it.
Do you remember his gamer tag?
No.
Do you remember what your gamer tag was?
Mine was Wolfang 402.
Okay, well, if any of you out there ever spoke to Wolfang 402 on Xbox Live on Xbox 360 saying that you had a map of Mowgli's Palace, please contact us immediately. Anyway. So, all I had to go on was this old as hell map that I'd received in the mail back in the 90s. It was a promotional item sent out to people who had recently been to Disney World. And I guess since I had been there in the late 80s, that was recent. I didn't really intend to hang on to it. It just got shoved into my books and comics from my childhood. I'd only remembered it months into my research, and even then it took me another few weeks to locate the storage bin my parents had shoved it all into. But I did find it. Locals were no help, as most were transplants who had moved to the beach in recent years, or old residents who just sneered at me and made rude gestures the second I managed to say, "Where would I find Mowgli's?" The drive took me through an inordinately long corridor of overgrowth. Tropical plants that had run rampant and overpopulated the area mixed with the native species of flora that actually belonged there and had tried to reclaim the land. I was in awe when I reached the front gates of the resort, tremendous, monolithic wooden gates, whose supports to either side looked like they must have been cut from giant sequoias. The gate itself had been gouged in several places by woodpeckers and eaten away at the base by burrowing insects.
God, just the atmosphere already. That's like the peak of this story is like the atmosphere. Oh my God, it just like oozes atmosphere.
Yeah.
Hanging on the gate was a sheet of metal, some random scrap, with hand-painted letters scrawled in black, "Abandoned by Disney." Clearly the handiwork of some past local or an employee who wanted to make small protest. The gates were all open enough to walk through, but not drive, so grabbing my digital camera and the map, whose flip side showed a layout of the resort, I set off on foot. The inner grounds of the place were just as overgrown as the entryway. Palm trees stood untended and ragged among piles of their own coconuts. Banana plants similarly stood in their own stinking, bug-riddled refuse. There was this sort of clash between order and chaos as carefully planted rows of perennial flowers mixed with an obnoxious tall weeds and stinking blackened mushrooms. All that remained of any outdoor structures were broken, rotting wood and various charred bits of unidentifiable material. What was most likely an information booth or an outdoor bar was now simply a pile of assorted debris, chopped up by past vandalism and ravaged by weather.
The most interesting thing on the grounds was a statue of Baloo, the friendly bear from the Jungle Book, which stood in a sort of courtyard in the front of the main building. He was frozen in a jovial wave towards no one, staring into empty space with a silly, toothy grin, as bird shit covered whole swaths of his fur, and vines ensnared the platform. I approached the main building, the palace, only to find the outside of the building covered in graffiti where the original paint hadn't peeled and chipped away. The front doors were just open. They had been taken off their hinges and were stolen.
That's so creepy. Just imagine you're in like this heavy jungle area. Like there's a big creepy statue of Baloo just laying on the ground like all rotten. You're standing in front of this massive palace. Like that's so spooky. Like just imagining stumbling upon a abandoned palace in the middle of a jungle
In North Carolina.
good. In North Carolina.
Above the front doors, or the gaping maw where they had been, someone once again painted, "Abandoned by Disney." I wish I could tell you about all the awesome stuff I saw inside the palace. Forgotten statues, abandoned cash registers, a full-fledged secret society of homeless bums. But no. The inside of the building was so stark, so bare that I actually think people had stolen the molding off the walls. Anything that was too big to steal, counters, desk, giant fake trees, they were all resting amid this empty echoed chamber that amplified my every step like a slow rat-a-tat of a machine gun.
I checked the floor plan and headed to all locations that might seem in any way interesting. The kitchen was, as you'd imagine, an industrial food prep area with all the appliances and space, no expenses spared. Every glass surface was broken, every door knocked off its hinges, every metal surface kicked in and dented. The entire place smelled like very old piss. Ugh.
Yeah, can you imagine what that smells like? I have cats. I can imagine.
The huge freezer, not even remotely cool now, had row upon row of empty shelf space. Hooks hung from the ceiling, probably for hanging cuts of meat. As I stood inside for a moment, I noticed they were swinging. Each hook swung in a random direction, but their movements were so slow and small that it was almost impossible to see. I figured it had been caused by my own footsteps, so I stopped one from swinging by clutching it in my fist, then carefully letting go. But within seconds, it started to swing once more.
Ooh, spooky. I was getting some major Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes. Yeah. But also kind of mixed in, like, the whole time you were reading that section. I don't know why. You know that episode of Family Guy where Stewie gets lost at Disney and then gets put into the It's a Small World? I'm like, this is the secret behind Disney.
Did they get rid of that ride?
It's a Small World?
Yeah, I thought they were doing away with it because it was kind of controversial.
Last time I was there, they still had it. I haven't heard.
The bathrooms were in much the same state as the rest of the place. Just like the rest of Treasure Island Resort, someone had methodically smashed each porcelain commode with coconuts and other implements. There was about a half-inch of rancid, stinking, stagnant water on the floor, so I didn't stay there very long. What's odd is that the toilets and the sinks and the bidets in the ladies' room, yes, I went there, all dripped, leaked, or just ran freely. Ooh, it seemed to me that they should have shut the water off long, long ago. I'm talking about the atmosphere again, like, I just imagine all these like greens and yellows and just like nasty.
I'm imagining a lot of algae.
Yeah, because you got to think this is surrounded by water, right?
Yeah,
They were talking about this being like...
This is like on an island, kind of off North Carolina. Emerald Island.
Yeah, well, I mean, island, I guess.
I'm assuming. I don't know. Anyway. There were plenty of rooms in the resort, but naturally I didn't have time to look through them all. The few I did peer into were similarly wrecked, and I didn't expect to find anything there. I thought there were actually a television or radio in one room, as I really think I heard a quiet conversation coming out. Yeesh. Though it was like a whisper, probably my own breathing echoing in the silence, or just another case of the sound of flowing water playing tricks on the mind. This is what it sounded like. I didn't believe it. A short, unknown reply. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Your father told you. An unknown reply, or possibly just weeping.
It's so creepy. Oh my god.
I know.
I'd be gone.
Oh yeah, I'd have been out a long time ago. What are you talking about?
But at the same time, it's that intrigue I was talking about, to where it's like I almost feel like I couldn't look away at the same time.
Whenever I stopped the meat hook and it kept swinging, and there was no explainable cause.
Now you're hearing stuff.
Scully Boy's out.
now there's talking in the distance.
Yeah, no, I'm not that eager to die. I know. That sounds ridiculous. I'm just telling you what I experienced. Why I thought there might have been something running in that room. Or worse, some vagrants who had holed up there and probably would have just knifed me. At the front of the doors of the palace again, I figured I hadn't found anything of note and had wasted the trip up. As I looked out the door, I noticed something interesting in the courtyard that I had apparently missed. Something that would give me at least one thing to show for all my trouble, even if it was just a photograph.
There, as a lifelike statue of a python, maybe 80 feet long, coiled up and sunning itself on a pedestal right in the center of the area. It was almost time for the sun to start setting, so the light fell onto the object in the perfect way for a photograph. I approached the python and snapped a photo. Then I stood on my toes and snapped another. I moved closer again to get the detail of its face. Slowly, casually, the python lifted its head, looked directly into my eyes, turned, and slithered off the pedestal, across the grass, and into the trees. So this is getting close to nighttime too.
Yeah.
So that makes this even worse.
But also in that moment, it's like, of course it looks so lifelike. So no wonder you missed it when you first came here.
Mm-hmm. All 80 feet of it, its head long disappeared into the woods before its tail even left the sunning spot. Disney had released all their exotic animals onto the grounds. Right there on my floor plan map was the reptile house. Whew. I should have known. I'd read about the sharks at Treasure Isle, and I should have known they'd done this. I was dumbfounded, just utterly stupefied. My mouth must have been hanging open for the longest time before I came back down to earth and snapped it shut. I blinked a few times and backed away from where the snake had been, back toward the palace.
Even though it was totally gone, I still wasn't taking my chances and backed my way into the building. It took a few deep breaths and slaps to my own face to get myself right in the head again after that. I looked for a place to sit down, as my legs were feeling a little bit like jelly at this point. Of course, there was no place to sit down unless I wanted to recline in the broken glass and dead leaf carpet or hauled myself up onto a desk of questionable reliability.
Imagine this dude just hops up on this. Whoa! Whoa!
I had seen some stairs near the palace lobby and decided to go have a seat there until I felt better. The staircase was far enough away from the front of the building to be relatively clean, save for a startling accumulation of dust. I pulled a wedge of metal off the wall, once again painted with the "Abandoned by Disney" motto I'd become accustomed to. I placed the wedge on the stairs and sat on it to keep at least somewhat clean.
That's so creepy that there's just like all throughout this abandoned place, just abandoned by Disney, these sporadic spots. Like, that's so spooky.
Yeah.
The stairway led downward below ground level, using my camera flash as a sort of improvised flashlight. Ooh, that's it's like
What?
Insidious.
Yeah, I was about to say, what horror movie or horror game does that remind me of, where all they can see is like the flash of the camera?
Insidious. Remember, he's going down the hall and he's snapping the pictures, and the mannequin girls are standing there and they like twitch.
Hell
You'll have to edit in a picture of that. That scared me so bad. The mannequin girls, they scared me so bad.
Maybe one day we can talk more about that in a review.
We'll definitely get there.
Oh, one day.
I could see that the staircase ended in a metal mesh door with a padlock, a sign on the door. A real sign read, "Mascots only, thank you." This perked up my spirits a little bit for two reasons. One, a mascots only area would have definitely had some interesting stuff back in the day. Two, the padlock was still in place. Nobody had gone down there. Not the vandals, not the looters, nobody. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph. Or want only steal. What is that?
Wantonly steel.
What's that mean?
I don't fucking know. What does wantonly steel mean?
I have no clue. I've never heard wantonly in my life before, I don't think.
Look it up and we'll pretend we know what we're talking about.
Wantonly.
Okay.
Oh my god. What does wantonly mean?
Wantonly means, in a deliberate and unprovoked way. Do you want to hear the next one?
Wantonly.
Watanli.
Wamatanye.
Wimatanya.
Wamatanye. Okay.
This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph or wantonly steal. I had come to the palace essentially agreeing with myself that it was okay to take anything I wanted because, hey, abandoned.
It didn't take much to bust the lock. Well, actually, that's wrong. It didn't take much to burst the metal plate on the wall that the padlock was hooked to. Time and decay had done most of the work for me, and I was able to bend the metal plate enough to pull the screws out of the wall, something nobody else had apparently thought of or hadn't been able to do at the time. The mascots only area was a startling and very welcome change from the rest of the building I'd seen. For one, every second or third fluorescent light overhead was illuminated, even though they flickered and faded randomly. Also, nothing had been stolen or broken, even if age and exposure were definitely taking their toll. Tables had notepads and pens. There were clocks, even a punching clock on the wall complete with filled-out time cards. Chairs were scattered around, and there was even a small break room with an old static-filled television and long rotted-out food and drinks on the counter.
Oof. So this place has still got electricity.
And, okay, if he was exploring this place in 2013, that means then them fluorescent lights had lasted probably 20 years, which makes me think that somebody's
Which is
changing
exciting
them.
because I'm also thinking, since I haven't read the sequel stories to this, I'm like, what's going on here? So,
See, I'm starting to think that somebody's replacing the light bulbs, because there's no way.
it was like one of those post-apocalypse movies where everything is left in a state of evacuation. As I walked the maze like sub-basement hallways of the mascots only area, the sights just became more and more interesting. As I went further, desks and tables were knocked over, papers scattered and almost melded with the damp floor, and a large carpet of mold was slowly overtaking the real rotting crimson floor covering. Everything was just sort of squishy. Anything wood disintegrated into mush when I applied even the least amount of force, and clothing items hanging on hooks in one of the rooms simply fell to moist, threads if I tried to unhook them. One thing that annoyed me was that light was becoming more sparse and unreliable as I went further into the dark, suffocating depths of the place. Eventually, I reached a black and yellow striped door with the words, Character Prep 1 stenciled on it.
The door wouldn't open at first. I figured this was probably where the costumes were kept, and I definitely wanted a photograph of that twisted, stinking mess. Try as I might, whatever angle I tried, the door wouldn't budge. That is until I gave up and started to walk away. That was when there was a slight popping sound, and the door creaked open slowly.
Oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. That's scary. You turn around and just... Ooh, that got me a little bit.
Inside the room was completely dark, pitch black. I used the camera flash to look for a light switch in the wall by the door, but there was nothing. As I made my search, I was jarred out of my senses of excitement by a loud electrical buzz. Rows of lights overhead suddenly flashed to life, flickering and fading in and out like the rest I had passed. It took a second for my eyes to adjust, but it seemed like the light was going to just keep getting brighter until all the bulbs exploded, but just when I thought it would reach that critical stage, the lights dimmed a bit and steadied.
The room was exactly as I had pictured it. Various Disney costumes hung on the wall, fully put together like strange cartoon cadavers hung from invisible nooses. God, that's such a cool image.
But also just the wording, it's it evokes a lot of spooky
I don't know if
imagery.
I've ever read a creepypasta with this much atmosphere, almost. It's so good. It's so described. There was an entire rack of loincloths and native clothes on hangers toward the back. What I found odd and what I wanted to photograph right away was a Mickey Mouse costume at the center of the room. Unlike the other costumes, it was lying on its back in the center of the floor like a murder victim. The fur on the costume was rotten and shedding, creating bare patches. What was even odder, however, was the coloring of the costume. It was like a photo negative of the actual Mickey Mouse. Black where he should be white, and white where he should be black. His normally red overalls were light blue. The sight was off-putting enough that I actually put off photographing the thing until last. I took pictures of the costumes hanging on the walls, upward angles, downward angles, side shots to show an entire row of frozen, putrid cartoon faces, some with plastic eyes missing. Then I decided to stage a shot, just one of the bedraggled character heads on the slick, grimy floor. I reached for the headpiece of a Donald Duck costume and carefully removed it so the thing wouldn't fall apart in my hands. As I looked into the face of the wide-eyed, moldering head, a loud clattering sound made me jump with fright. I looked down at my feet, and there between my shoes was a human skull. It had fallen out of the mascot head and shattered into pieces at my feet. Only the empty face and lower jaw remained, staring up at me.
I dropped the duck head immediately, as you'd expect, and moved for the door. As I stood in the doorway, I looked back to the skull on the floor. I had to take a picture of it, I had to, for any number of reasons that may seem silly, but only if you don't think it through. I'd need proof of what happened, especially if Disney was going to somehow make this go away. I had no doubt in my mind right from the start that even if it was just a gross negligence, Disney was responsible for this. That's when Mickey, that photo negative opposite Mickey in the middle of the floor, started to get up. First, sitting up, then climbing to its feet. The Mickey costume, or whoever was inside of it, stood there, and at the center of the room, its fake face just staring directly at me as I mumbled no over and over and over.
With shaking hands, a violently thrashing heart, and legs that had once turned again to jelly, I managed to lift the camera and aim it at the opposite creature, now quietly sizing me up. The digital camera's screen displayed only dead pixels in the shape of the thing. It was a perfect silhouette of the Mickey Mouse costume. As the camera moved in my unsteady hands, the dead pixels spread, marring the screen wherever Mickey's outline moved to. Then the camera died, went blank and quiet and broken. I raised my eyes once again to the Mickey Mouse costume.
Hey!
It said in a hushed, perverted, but perfectly executed Mickey Mouse voice.
You want to see my head come off?
It started to pull at its own head, working its clumsy glove-clad fingers around its neck with clawing, impatient movements similar to a wounded man trying to pull himself free of a predator's jaws. As it worked its digits into its neck, so much blood, so much thick, chunky yellow blood.
I turned away as I heard a sickening tearing of cloth and flesh. Only cared about getting away. Above the doorway out of this room, I saw the final message clawed into the metal with bone or fingernail. Abandoned by God. I never got the pictures out of the camera. I never wrote the blog entry about it. After I ran from that place, fled for my sanity, if not for my very life, I knew why Disney didn't want anyone to know about this place.
They didn't want anyone like me getting in.
They didn't want anything like that getting out.
The end.
Hell yeah.
That was Abandoned by Disney. What did you think?
It was good.
It's very atmospheric.
Knowing that there's sequels definitely makes me interested in seeing what could possibly be next.
I feel like the first sequel is something to do with like a bunker under Disney. It's like some kind of like war bunker. And there's something about these gas masks, like Mickey gas masks or something like that. We'll get to it. We'll get to it in our next.
But like you saying that, it reminds me of all the tunnels that are supposedly under the Disney parks.
Is like kind of
no, that sounds creepy.
But this was Abandoned by Disney by Slime Beast.
Yeah,
is that what
that's his name? Now, I do think that we need to mention that if you want to check out this creepypasta for yourself, just head over to creepypasta.org, and you can find it there with all the full credits from Slime Beast, the creator. So just in case you want to read it for yourself.
This is just a classic, though. It's a little cheesy at the end, but it's like fun cheesy, you know what I mean? It's like that perfect kind of like I said, I was probably like 12 when I read this, so to me it was like, this is probably the first creepypasta I ever read, so to me I was like, like, when I got to the Mickey part, I was like, I don't really believe that, but I still was like, I wonder if this Mowgli's Palace is real, because I started looking up pictures of the map, and dude on Xbox was swearing up and down. He was like, dude, I got one of those maps in the mail one day. And I was like, he's the one who showed me this story, so
maybe that was Slime Beast. Maybe
it was him.
We don't know.
He wrote the story.
All right, guys. Well, that was our discussion and reading of the creepypasta itself. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell.
And before we go, we exceeded expectations on our review of 1 Hour Photo. We were hoping if we got lucky in a million years, we would have gotten 100 views, but we hit 160 views and 32 subscribers.
And all this happened over the course of 48 hours. So while we both know that probably most of the people that have seen this video or subscribed to our channel are people that we know, we are deeply appreciative of everyone that took the time to just watch our photo and maybe send us a text message on how to improve. If you are new to our channel, please hit the subscribe button. We will be making content similar to this leading forward. We have more movie reviews coming up. We have more creepypastas on the back burner, and we're even talking about eventually starting to stream horror games. You know, everything horror, we're gonna do it here at the Horror Den. So please just show us some support. Tell your friends. I don't care if you share it to your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your Twitters. Having so much support right from our first video, like we couldn't have expected or even asked for anything
I
more.
remember I woke up shell shocked seeing 160 views. I was like, 100, that's good. And then the next day it was almost at 200, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, the 50, 60 views happened overnight. So we don't know if everybody watched the video in its entirety, which at this point, you know, we take what we get, and we're very happy with it because we are new to this. We are inexperienced. Our budget is low. This is done out of our own free time and our own passion for horror and everything associated with it. So if you love it as much as we do, please just show your support. Share this with people who are like-minded or people who may just find it creepy. And thank you so much for exceeding our expectations. We really appreciate it.
Once again, feel free, since this was our first creepypasta reading, feel free to leave any constructive criticism again, just like in the last video. Any improvements you think we could make, like just anything you think that might make it a better experience for you to watch or listen to.
Don't forget to go follow us over on Instagram, and if you don't leave a comment on our videos about any suggestions that you want us to do next, feel free to do that over on Instagram. Also, please comment, please like. It helps us with the algorithm to get our name out there, because there are a lot of horror dens on YouTube, but there is only one horror den with us in it.
Editor, what did you think of the story?
I thought the story was really good. So me and Zombie Cat, we've actually listened to this story together before.
We did.
It's been a pretty long time, so a lot of the little details and the ambiances of it, I couldn't necessarily remember to a point. But today, reading back through it or listening to you guys read through it, it kind of exceeded my expectations. Honestly, I didn't remember it being as descriptive and as good as it actually is, but I was pretty pleased with it. So I'm glad that we got to go back through it again today, and hopefully you guys, the viewers, enjoy going through this stuff as much as we do. So yeah.
Just before we go, wanted to add this into a special little thank you to our editor DMAC behind the camera. If you ever hear his voice, that's him. He's an active part of these videos. So hopefully maybe one day we'll get to see some guest appearances of him on screen, and we will be asking for his opinion. Now, how about in the comments below, I have a little challenge for everybody. What was your favorite part of the story?
Ooh, that is a good one. There's a lot of just, like I said, it's just the atmosphere again. That's what this story excels in. It's fun. It's just really fun.
Yeah. So just like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell to be notified of any other upcoming videos. We do have our next movie review coming out hopefully next week. Leave a comment about what was your favorite part in the creepypasta today. And don't forget, stay spooky out there. We Matanye!
We Matanye. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph, or Watanli steal. I had come to the palace essentially agreeing with myself that it was okay to take anything I wanted. What did I do?
He's thinking of we've been talking.
Oh, we Matanya. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph. God. We gotta get past this one paragraph. That's it. After that, we can do this. It's gone. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph, or Watanli steal. That time it was me. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph, or Watanli steal. I had come to the back. God, this is so hard just because of one f***ing word.
This is way weird.
This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph, or Watanli steal.
Damn it, I held it!
I paused and that's what killed me.
You're gonna put a text in. This took us 30 minutes just to say this one phrase because we were laughing about King of the Hill and Wamatanye.
This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph or would timely steal. I had come to the palace.
You were doing so good.
This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something. Okay, wait, we're gonna pick right back. Okay. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something. Jesus Christ.
I'm gonna have to like edit it together word by word since we can't finish a full sentence.